Hello! It's that time of year when we tell spooky stories. And guess what? I'm going to tell you one that's all about Marigold Goes Visiting. It's a Georgia ghost story. It's told around campfires here in Georgia all the time. What does a missing cow have to do with ghosts? Find out in this Georgia ghost story written by Julie Ann Wallow. I don't have the book. I'm reading off the internet. It was an unusually warm day for late October in the foothills of Georgia. Windows that would normally be shut, tight as a drum, were open wide to invite the flow of warm air in before Jack Frost made his arrival. That's how it all began. Mr. McGillicuddy, Mr. McGillicuddy, your cow is out, your cow is out. Marigold? I knew I hadn't seen her in a while. I figured she was down at the creek or overeating acorns under the old oak tree, said Mr. McGillicuddy. You know she's as gentle as a kitten, Earl. She wouldn't harm a fly. Which way did she go? I'll go fetch her home. I wonder how she got out. Mr. McGillicuddy scratched his bald head. Well, sir, Earl began, if you don't mind me saying, your fence is about as rickety as that old barn of yours. Earl, I don't need any sass from a young whippersnapper like you. That barn is sturdy as the house I live in. Yes, sir, said Earl. I'd have to agree with that. Earl looked around at the dangling shutters barely hanging on to the side of the house. The house leaned a little bit to the left. He was sure not going to visit on a windy day, for he was afraid the house would blow away. So which way did Marigold go, Earl? She's at the house, Mr. McGillicuddy. I'll help you get her home, but first I need to find Reverend Mathis and set up some kind of arrangements. Arrangements? Mr. McGillicuddy asked Earl. Yes, sirree. The missus, she's deader'n a doornail. Mrs. Fletcher? Yes, sirree. Not a breath left in her, Mr. McGillicuddy. Well, what happened to her, Earl? Well, Mr. McGillicuddy, the wife's been reading some of those danged old scary books, the kind that keep you awake at night. And you know, she's been a little hard of hearing since the termites ate the legs off the cupboard and all the cast iron skillets came crashing down like a mountain of rocks, Earl said. Yeah, but what does that have to do with anything, Earl? I'm sorry as I can be about Miss Fletcher. I ain't never heard of anybody passing away from lack of hearing. Oh, no, sir, that's not how it happened at all, said Earl. Well, son, Mr. McGillicuddy said, spit it out. What in the world happened? Well, sir, you see, she was smack dab in the middle of one of those scary stories, the one she gets from Mrs. Jones, that lives 27 fence posts down towards the holler. The missus, she was all tied up in the words, gnawing on her fingernails and her feet all drawed up in the chair. You know how them women folk get. I reckon I do. Yeah, so what? Earl says. Well, it's been pretty near warm for late October. Yeah, Earl, said Mr. McGillicuddy. Go on. So she just must really been at a good scary part, you see. That's when it happened. That dang cow of yours stuck her head in the window, let out a long, slow moo. Well, the wife, with her ears half cocked, done thought she'd run up on a ghost. When Marigold said moo, the wife heard boo, and she killed over like a fly smacked with a fly swatter. So now that's how Marigold became known as the Boo Cow. That part wasn't in the book or in the story, but I thought it was funny. I love them silly puns, don't you? Well, that was a fun story. Now we got to remember that's all it was just a story. Mrs. Earl didn't die 'cause the Carol scared her half to death. But I will tell you a spooky story that about scared your great pawpaw half to death. One day, him and his uncle, his brother, which would be my uncle, was out behind the barn sneaking a smoke of a cigarette. Well, let me tell you something. My pawpaw heard 'em back there sneaking that smoke. So he slipped round the other side of the barn, and there's this big old bush that all the leaves done fell off, 'cause it was this same time of year, about October. Well, my pawpaw shook that bush, and my daddy and my Uncle Dorsey, woo, child, they jumped up, run back to the house just as hard and fast as they could go. 'Cause when Pawpaw shook that bush, he also said, "What are you boys a doing? I'm a gonna get you. It's me, that old devil." Them boys run in the house a hollering, "The devil's after us! The devil's after us!" And my mama turned around and wiped her hands on her apron and said, "Well, if he is, you's a doing of something you shouldn't have been a doing." And they had been. They'd been sneaking the smoke behind the old barn. Well, that got 'em a sick stomach, 'cause that old stuff was gross, and a good scare. And my pawpaw laughed all the way back to the house from the barn. I love scary stories, don't you? All right. Y'all take care of yourself. And remember, scary stories are just for fun. None of it's real. Except Pawpaw playing like he was the devil. Y'all be good. I love you, and I'll see you next time.